The stars above Earth had always been silent, just like the endless space that stretched between them. But today, the silence was broken. A massive fleet of alien ships appeared on the horizon, their engines burning bright as they moved steadily toward the planet. The ships were large and imposing, their shapes sleek and alien, with armor that shimmered in the cold light of distant stars. The leaders of this fleet, the Zorathians, were known throughout the galaxy for their strength and power. They had conquered countless worlds and destroyed anyone who dared challenge them. Earth, however, had always been left alone. Until now, the Zorathians were confident. They believed Earth was a weak, unimportant world, one that would fall easily under their control. They had received intelligence reports that suggested humanity was just starting to venture into space, with primitive technology and little ability to defend itself. The Zorathians believed that coming to Earth would be easy, an opportunity to show the galaxy that even the most stubborn worlds could be brought under their rule. As the fleet moved closer to Earth, the leaders of the Zorathian army sat in the command room of their flagship. Their eyes gleamed with arrogance as they discussed their plans. "This will be quick," the fleet commander, Zorak, said with a smirk. "We'll land, give them a show of force, and take control. The humans won't even know what hit them." The other commanders agreed, nodding and smiling in excitement. They had done this 100 times before, and it had always worked. The Zorathians had crushed every world they had encountered, bending them to their will without breaking a sweat. Now, they were headed to Earth, thinking it would be no different. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the leaders of the United Earth government had been watching the alien fleet approach. They knew something was happening, but they didn't yet understand the full scale of the threat. The human military had been prepared for many things: hostile alien species, dangerous space pirates, and the possibility of future wars. But the Zorathians were different. They were powerful, and they had come with a purpose. Humanity's military leaders, including General Julia Wren, gathered in the Earth Command Center. They had been briefed on the incoming fleet and were ready for action, but something was missing, something they hadn't been able to prepare for. "We knew someone would come eventually," General Wren said, her voice calm but filled with concern. "But I didn't expect it to be them." The room was filled with tension. Earth had a strong military, but nothing compared to the Zorathian fleet. As the alien ships grew closer, the generals started to discuss their options. Should they fire first? Should they try to negotiate? They didn't know what the Zorathians wanted, but they could guess. The fleet was far too large and too well armed for a peaceful visit. But then, a message came through. The Earth's communication officers quickly decoded it. The message was simple, but its meaning was clear. "Welcome to Earth. We look forward to meeting you." At first, the generals were confused. What did this mean? They hadn't expected a message of peace. General Wren looked around the room, trying to understand the situation. The Zorathians were powerful, but Earth wasn't about to bow down to them. "We're going to give them a welcome they won't forget," she said, her voice low and filled with determination. Back in the Zorathian fleet, Zorak watched the Earth's message with a sense of confusion. He hadn't expected such a response. Most planets cowered in fear when the Zorathians arrived. They were used to surrendering without a fight. But this human message was different. It was bold, even defiant. Zorak smiled, believing the humans were merely trying to be brave. "They want to play games," he said with a grin. "Let's show them what happens when they try to challenge us." As the Zorathian ships entered Earth's atmosphere, their enormous size and intimidating appearance filled the skies. The human military was in place, but they held their fire. There was no order to strike yet. They were waiting, watching, trying to gauge their next move. The Zorathian fleet was overwhelming, but Earth wasn't about to give in without a fight. Zorak ordered his fleet to position themselves above major cities on Earth. They began to lower their shields and prepare for their next move. They wanted to show the humans their power, to intimidate them into submission. The Zorathians had always been able to force their will on others, and they were confident Earth would be no different. But as the fleet descended further, something strange happened. The human military didn't react as expected. Instead of retreating or panicking, Earth's fleet emerged from the planet's surface, just as large and intimidating as the Zorathian ships. The two fleets faced each other in the cold vacuum of space. The Zorathians had come to Earth expecting to see fear in humanity's eyes. Instead, they saw something else. A challenge. The Zorathians hesitated. They had never faced anything like this before. Humanity's fleet wasn't just large. It was organized, its ships sleek and capable, designed for maneuvering and combat. The humans weren't just standing there. They were ready to fight. This was not the reaction they had anticipated. Zorak stood frozen in his command room. The smirk he had worn earlier faded, replaced with a deep sense of unease. He had expected to boast, to crush Earth's defenses without difficulty. But now, standing before him, was a fleet of ships that refused to bow down. Humanity was ready, and the Zorathians could feel the weight of their mistake. For the first time, the Zorathians realized they had made a grave error. They had underestimated humanity. And now, they would have to face the consequences. The two fleets hovered in space, locked in a silent standoff. The Zorathian commanders, who had been so confident just hours before, now exchanged nervous glances. They had come to Earth to boast, to show off their power and conquer yet another world. But instead, they were met with an unexpected display of strength from the humans. The Earth fleet, though smaller, was far more advanced than they had anticipated. It was as if the humans had been waiting for this moment. Zorak stood at the front of his command room, watching the humans' fleet closely. He was a seasoned commander, used to having control, but today he felt a sense of unease that he couldn't shake off. The Earth ships weren't just floating there in passive defense. They were poised, ready for action. The Zorathian fleet was massive, its ships intimidating and powerful, but they lacked the finesse and coordination of the humans' forces. "Prepare for battle," Zorak ordered, his voice firm, but his hands trembled slightly as they gripped the controls. The Zorathians had always used brute force to win, but it was clear that this time it wouldn't be so easy. They had faced countless enemies, but none like this. As the command was given, the Zorathian fleet began to shift into position. Their ships aligned, weapons primed, and their massive guns aimed at Earth. They were ready to make their move, to show the humans the true meaning of power. But before they could fire a single shot, the human fleet did something unexpected. With lightning speed, the human ships scattered, each one breaking off into smaller, more agile formations. The Zorathians watched, shocked by the humans' swift maneuvering. The Earth fleet wasn't relying on sheer size or firepower. They were using speed and strategy. The Zorathians had never seen anything like this before. The human ships moved in a fluid, coordinated dance, each one dodging the Zorathian attacks with ease. It was as if the humans knew exactly what the Zorathians would do before they even thought about it. The Zorathian guns fired, but their blasts missed by miles, splashing harmlessly into the void of space. "What are they doing?" Zorak muttered to himself. The Zorathians were used to overpowering their enemies with brute strength. But these humans were different. They were using precision, agility, and intelligence to avoid the alien onslaught. Zorak had been so sure of victory, but now his confidence was starting to waver. In the Earth Command Center, General Wren watched the chaos unfold on the screens in front of her. She could see the Zorathian ships firing, but the humans were already one step ahead. The fleet was moving like a well-oiled machine, each ship responding to the others with perfect synchronicity. It was almost as if they had trained for this very moment. And in many ways they had. "We have them on the defensive," General Wren said quietly, her eyes never leaving the screen. "Keep the pressure on. Don't let up." The human fleet continued to move in perfect harmony, dodging the Zorathian fire with impossible precision. But even more than that, they were striking back. The human ships weren't just avoiding the alien blasts. They were counterattacking. With every move, they launched energy missiles, precision strikes, and advanced weaponry that the Zorathians had never encountered before. The alien fleet's shields flared as they absorbed the impacts, but it was clear that the humans were doing real damage. Zorak gritted his teeth as he watched the battle unfold. The Zorathian fleet was powerful, yes, but they were losing their advantage. His ships were slower, less maneuverable than the humans' vessels, and each time they tried to land a hit, the humans dodged it with ease. It was like fighting a shadow. Increase the intensity of the fire, Zorak barked. His eyes narrowed as he watched the humans continue to press their advantage. But even with all their firepower, they couldn't seem to land a decisive blow. The humans were too quick, too coordinated. Despite the Zorathian fleet's overwhelming numbers, the human ships never seemed to be in the same place for long. Each time the Zorathian fleet locked onto a target, the humans were already moving, dancing around them with speed and precision that made the alien commanders question everything they thought they knew about warfare. The battle continued to rage, but the Zorathian fleet was beginning to show signs of strain. Their once unshakable confidence was crumbling, and the realization was dawning on them. They had underestimated Earth. The humans were not just another weak, primitive species. They were warriors in their own right, and they had learned the art of war in ways the Zorathians had never imagined. In the midst of the chaos, Zorak stood still, watching the humans move with an eerie calmness. He had seen many battles, but never one like this. He knew that they had to end the fight soon, or they would lose everything. "Prepare for the final assault," he ordered, his voice steely with determination. But as the Zorathians began to focus their firepower on a smaller group of human ships, something unexpected happened. One of the human ships, smaller than the rest, but armed with devastating firepower, launched a series of powerful torpedoes that broke through the Zorathian defenses. The blasts hit their target, the flagship. The ship shook as explosions rocked its hull. Zorak stumbled, gripping the command chair to steady himself. "Report," he shouted. The Zorathian officer at his side looked panicked as he checked the damage. "Sir, the flagship's shields are down. We've lost several systems." The Zorathian fleet was faltering. The humans had landed a blow, and the once unstoppable Zorathian fleet was starting to feel the pressure. Zorak's heart raced. They had come to Earth thinking they were invincible, but now they were beginning to realize that they were the ones in danger. The humans had not only surprised them, they had shown them something far more terrifying. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to protect their home. The battle above Earth raged on, but now the tide was shifting. The Zorathian fleet, which had once felt invincible, was now struggling to keep its formation intact. The smaller human ships, moving with unmatched speed and precision, were continuing to press their advantage. Each Zorathian ship that tried to retaliate was met with a storm of missiles and energy blasts from the humans. The once confident Zorathians were now fighting for survival. On the Zorathian flagship, Zorak's mind raced. He had never imagined that Earth could put up such a fight. The humans had no overwhelming numbers, no enormous fleet, yet they seemed to understand the art of warfare in a way the Zorathians never had. The humans had proven themselves to be tacticians, using every advantage they had, speed, agility, and intelligence, to keep the Zorathians on the defensive. "Damage report," Zorak barked, his voice strained as the ship shook from another round of attacks. "Sir, the port side of the flagship has sustained heavy damage. Shields are at 30%. We're losing power to several key systems," the officer responded, fear creeping into his voice. "We need to pull back and regroup, or we risk total destruction." Orak's eyes flashed with anger, but he refused to show weakness. He had come here to conquer Earth, not to retreat. The thought of leaving now, with the humans having delivered such a devastating blow, was unbearable. His pride wouldn't allow it. "We are not retreating," Zorak said coldly, his jaw tightening. "Prepare to engage all weapons systems. We will not leave until Earth is ours. Do not let them see fear." Despite the order, Zorak could sense the unease spreading through his fleet. His commanders were beginning to question the wisdom of continuing the attack. The human fleet, though smaller, was fighting with a level of desperation and skill that the Zorathians had not expected. They weren't just defending. They were pushing back relentlessly. On Earth's side, General Wren stood in front of the massive screen showing the live feed of the battle. The human ships were still moving fluidly, dodging the Zorathian blasts with incredible skill. But Wren knew that their success so far hadn't come without cost. The human fleet was smaller, and many of their ships had taken damage. The Zorathians were relentless, and if the battle dragged on too long, Earth's fleet could be overwhelmed. "Status report," Wren said, her voice calm but intense. "General, we're holding our ground, but we're taking damage." An officer replied, "Our fleet is getting worn down, and if the Zorathians keep up the pressure, we might not be able to keep this up much longer." Wren nodded, her mind working quickly. She knew that they couldn't keep fighting in a prolonged engagement. They needed to end this battle, and fast. But how? The Zorathians had the firepower to destroy the entire fleet with just one concentrated assault. "We need to go on the offensive," Wren decided. "Prepare the Earth fleet for a coordinated strike. We're going to hit them where it hurts." The orders were given, and the human fleet quickly shifted tactics. No longer were they just evading the Zorathians' attacks. They were now moving to strike. Each ship in the human fleet was assigned a target. Smaller vessels targeted Zorathian weapon systems, while larger ships focused on weakening the shields of the alien fleet. The strategy was clear. If they couldn't win by outgunning the Zorathians, they would win by outsmarting them. Zorak's gaze hardened as he watched the humans adjust their tactics. His heart pounded. For the first time since the battle began, he felt a true sense of fear. The humans weren't just fighting. They were learning. Every move they made seemed to counteract his fleet's attacks, and their precision was terrifying. It was as if the humans had read his every move before he made it. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the Zorathian flagship. The blast sent shockwaves through the ship, knocking several officers off their feet. Zorak stumbled but quickly regained his balance. His eyes widened in horror as he saw the damage to the flagship. Several key systems had been destroyed, and fire alarms blared across the bridge. "Sir, the main reactor is critically damaged. If we don't get out of here, we'll lose the ship," one of the officers cried, fear in his voice. Zorak's chest tightened. This was not how it was supposed to go. He had come to Earth expecting an easy victory. But now his flagship was on the verge of being destroyed, and the rest of his fleet was not faring much better. The humans had taken the fight to him in a way he couldn't have imagined. But despite the fear creeping into his heart, Zorak refused to give up. He had one last card to play, one last move to make. "Prepare the final weapon," Zorak ordered, his voice cold and determined. "If we cannot defeat them with our fleet, we will do so with firepower. Bring the Earth to its knees." His officers exchanged uneasy glances, but they obeyed. They had come too far to turn back now. Back on Earth, General Wren watched as the Zorathian flagship seemed to retreat slightly. But she wasn't fooled. She knew that Zorak wouldn't give up so easily, and if he had a secret weapon, now was the time he would use it. The battle wasn't over yet. "Stay sharp, everyone," Wren said, her voice steady. "This isn't over. We'll win this, but we need to stay focused." As the two fleets clashed once again, the humans braced themselves for the final confrontation. Neither side was willing to back down. The stakes were higher than ever before. This wasn't just a battle for control of Earth, it was a battle for survival. And humanity wasn't about to let its home fall without a fight. The tension in the air was almost palpable as the two fleets locked in a fierce struggle, the stars themselves seeming to tremble with the force of the battle. The Zorathian flagship, now heavily damaged, was desperately trying to reposition itself for a final strike, while the human fleet adjusted, waiting for the next move. General Wren stood at the command center, her eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing the chaotic dance of ships in the vastness of space. "Status update," Wren said, her voice steady despite the pressure mounting around her. "General, the Zorathians are preparing something. We're not sure what it is, but it's big," one of her officers responded, voice laced with concern. "Everyone, hold your positions. Prepare to counter any surprise," Wren ordered. She could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on her. It was a delicate balance now. If the humans didn't act fast enough, the Zorathians might unleash something devastating. On the Zorathian flagship, Zorak watched as his final weapon was being readied. The massive cannon, one of the most destructive devices the Zorathians had ever developed, was charging. It was their last hope to end the conflict with one overwhelming blow. If this failed, they would lose the battle. And Zorak knew that if they failed here, the Zorathians would never be able to threaten Earth again. The humans had shown too much resilience, too much cunning. The cannon began to hum, its energy rapidly building. Zorak's cold eyes narrowed. "Fire," he commanded. With a tremendous roar, the weapon unleashed its full power, a beam of searing light that shot out into space, directly aimed at the heart of Earth's fleet. It was a weapon designed to destroy entire fleets in one strike, and the Zorathians believed it would be enough to crush the humans once and for all. As the beam hurtled toward them, the human fleet was caught off guard. The sheer intensity of the attack was unlike anything they had faced before. Wren's heart skipped a beat as the massive energy wave closed in. She knew that if they couldn't stop it, the entire fleet would be wiped out in an instant. "Brace for impact," Wren shouted, but she knew there was little time for preparation. In that critical moment, the Earth fleet did the unthinkable. Ships scattered, weaving in and out of formation with a skill and speed that defied logic. It was chaotic, almost frantic, but it was a calculated risk. The Zorathian weapon had an enormous blast radius, but the humans had learned something crucial about their enemy's tactics. They couldn't predict what the humans would do next. The first few ships took the brunt of the blast, their shields barely holding against the overwhelming force. Explosions erupted in the vacuum of space, the hulls of the vessels breaking apart in a fiery spectacle. But even as the human fleet lost ships, the remaining vessels were moving faster, avoiding the worst of the beam. It was a sacrifice, but it worked. The full force of the Zorathian weapon didn't hit the entire fleet. General Wren's eyes widened as she watched through the command center's display. The explosion was catastrophic, but not as catastrophic as the Zorathians had hoped. The humans had made it through the worst of it. "We lost some ships, but we're still here," Wren said, her voice tight with relief and determination. "Prepare to counterattack. Now is the time to finish this." The human ships, battered but far from defeated, regrouped quickly. They were more than just a fleet now. They were a symbol of humanity's survival, a testament to the strength of their will. And as they moved in for the next assault, their strategy was clear. They weren't just fighting for victory anymore. They were fighting for Earth itself. Meanwhile, Zorak seethed with rage. The humans had survived the unthinkable, and now they were poised to strike back with everything they had left. His eyes flicked nervously to the remaining ships in his fleet. The Zorathian forces had taken heavy losses, and though the final weapon had destroyed many of the human ships, it hadn't been enough. The humans weren't retreating. They weren't running. They were fighting back. Zorak quickly assessed the situation. His fleet was in disarray. Ships were damaged, and morale was faltering. The humans had shown an incredible amount of tenacity, and Zorak knew they would not go down without a fight. "Retreat," one of the officers suggested, seeing the battle turning against them. Zorak's gaze hardened. "No, we will finish this. If we have to destroy them with our last breath, we will. Prepare the final assault." But deep inside, Zorak felt doubt. The humans had defied expectations at every turn, and now The weight of their resolve was becoming undeniable. Could the Zorathians really win this war? Could they defeat humanity, or had they pushed Earth too far? Back on Earth, the fleet gathered, ready for their next move. The humans had lost ships, but they were not backing down. Their resolve was unshakable. General Wren looked at the holographic map one last time before giving the command. All ships, focus fire on the Zorathian flagship. We finished this now. With that command, the human fleet surged forward once more, their weapons lighting up the dark expanse of space. The Zorathians, exhausted and battered, had no choice but to face the storm that was humanity's will to survive. As the battle continued, it was clear this wasn't just a war for control of Earth. This was a war for the future, and humanity wasn't about to lose. The final moments of the battle were upon them. The Zorathian flagship, now heavily scared and limping through space, seemed like a dying animal trapped in a corner. Every move it made was desperate, each attempt to retaliate weaker than the last. On the human side, General Wren's mind was sharp with focus, the weight of their survival resting on the success of this final push. The human fleet was battered but not broken, its ships moving with a sense of unity and purpose that the Zorathians could no longer ignore. Wren stood tall in the command center, her eyes fixed on the screen as the battle raged around her. There were no more tricks, no more distractions. The Zorathians had played their hand, and now the humans would finish it. She couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Against all odds, Earth had fought back. The humans had faced unimaginable odds and survived, proving that their will to live, to protect their home, was stronger than any alien force. "General, we've lost another 3 ships," one of her officers reported, his voice tight with tension. "But the Zorathians are starting to retreat. Their flagship is the last stronghold." Wren's grip tightened on the armrest of her chair, but she kept her composure. "Hold position. All ships, focus on the flagship. We end this now." The command was passed along, and in a moment, the entire human fleet shifted its focus. The smaller, faster ships darted in and out of the Zorathian fleet, drawing fire and creating openings for the larger vessels to fire with precision. The Zorathian ships were losing their strength, their ability to fight back fading with every passing second. And as the human ships closed in, the Zorathian flagship, once an intimidating symbol of alien power, was now a sitting target. Zorak, still aboard the flagship, watched the advancing human ships. His heart pounded in his chest. He had fought for this moment, led his fleet into the heart of Earth's defenses, and yet here he was, on the verge of defeat. The realization hit him hard. The humans weren't just survivors. They were warriors in their own right. The Zorathian race, for all its power and technology, had underestimated humanity's ability to fight for their home. They had underestimated how far Earth would go to protect itself. "Damage report," Zorak shouted, his voice cracking with frustration. "We're losing power, sir. The shields are down to 5%. Our weapons systems are malfunctioning." The officer responded, his voice laced with panic. "We won't be able to hold them off much longer." Zorak's mind raced. Retreat was impossible. The Zorathians had come too far. But in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that it was over. The humans were not going to let them win. They had pushed Earth to the brink. And now, Earth was pushing back with everything it had. "We must escape," Zorak muttered, but even as he said it, he knew it was too late. The humans were closing in fast. Back on Earth, Wren's voice rang out once again, clear and firm. "All ships, prepare for the final attack. Aim for their engines. Disable their ability to flee." The human fleet surged forward, weapons charging. It wasn't just a fight to win anymore. It was a fight to ensure that the Zorathians would never threaten Earth again. The first volley hit the Zorathian flagship's engines, and the result was immediate. Sparks flew, and the massive ship lurched violently as its engines sputtered and failed. The flagship was crippled, its ability to move or fight rendered useless. Zorek's eyes widened with horror as the realization hit him like a hammer. "No," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "This cannot be happening." The human ships didn't stop. They continued to fire, pushing the Zorethians to the brink. And with every shot, the Zorethian fleet began to crumble. One by one, their ships exploded, consumed by fire and debris, until only the flagship remained, floating in the void of space, a symbol of an alien empire that had been defeated by the very humans they had once thought inferior. Ren's voice echoed through the comms, steady and calm, even as the battle reached its climax. "This is it, people. The Zorethian fleet is collapsing. Keep pressing them. We fought too hard to stop now." As the last of the Zorethian ships fell silent, the humans let out a collective sigh of relief. The battle had been long, hard, and costly, but they had won. Earth had survived, and they had proven that no force in the galaxy could intimidate them, no matter how powerful. Zorek's flagship was now a broken wreck, floating motionless in space. The Zorethian leader, once so proud and confident, had been reduced to a mere remnant of his empire. He was beaten, not just by superior firepower, but by the unyielding determination of humanity. "We've done it," Ren said softly as she looked at the screen. The last of the Zorethian ships drifted into nothingness. The stars seemed to shine brighter now, as if the entire galaxy had witnessed what had just transpired. The humans had fought with everything they had, and they had won. Earth was safe. But even more than that, humanity had proven something far more important. They had proven to the universe that they were a force to be reckoned with. The Zorethians had come to boast, to conquer. But it was the humans who had the last word. And in that moment, with the battle won and the Zorethian threat ended, Earth stood victorious. A beacon in the galaxy, unbroken and unbowed. The Deathworlders had shown the universe that no one pushed Earth too far without facing the consequences. The aftermath of the battle left space itself quiet, and still, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous hours. The remnants of the Zorethian fleet floated in the cold expanse, their once mighty ships now just drifting husks, crippled by humanity's relentless will to survive. General Ren stood at the command center, her gaze fixed on the screen before her. The human fleet had suffered casualties, but they had triumphed. Earth had not only defended itself, it had shown the galaxy that humanity was not a force to be underestimated. "We did it," one of her officers whispered, though it was more of a statement than a question. The crew around her breathed a collective sigh of relief, but Ren didn't allow herself to relax. Not yet. They had won, but the war was not over. The Zorethians would regroup, and others might come. Other enemies, other threats who might believe they could break humanity. "Report," Ren said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "All remaining Zorethian ships are disabled, General. Their flagship is heavily damaged, and their forces are in disarray. They're not going anywhere." The officer responded, his fingers flying over the control panel as he double-checked the data. Ren nodded. "What about the Zorethian commander?" "We've lost contact with the flagship, General. We believe Zorek is still aboard, though the command systems are offline." Ren turned back to the view of the fleet outside, a dark sea of debris and wreckage. She couldn't shake the feeling that this victory, while sweet, was only the beginning of something larger. The Zorethians would not take defeat lightly, and the galaxy was a much bigger place than they could have ever known. Earth had proven itself, yes, but Ren couldn't help but wonder if the Zorethians were just the first of many to come. She shifted her thoughts back to the present. There was still work to be done. The fleet had to be reorganized, the wounded treated, and the aftermath of the battle had to be addressed. But more than that, humanity needed to send a clear message. This victory wasn't just about defense. It was a declaration that Earth was not a prize to be taken, a world to be conquered. "We need to send a message," Ren said, her voice calm but resolute. One of the officers raised an eyebrow. "A message, General?" "Yes, to the rest of the galaxy. The Zorethians came to Boast. to claim Earth as theirs. They were wrong. Now we need to show them, and anyone else who might be thinking of doing the same, that Earth is not to be trifled with. Ren paused, considering the words carefully. Prepare a transmission to the Galactic Council. Tell them what happened here today. We've won, and we'll protect this planet at all costs. Earth is not a prize. It's our home. And if anyone dares to challenge us again, they'll face the consequences. The officer hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Understood, General. The message will go out immediately. As the transmission was prepared, Rand took a moment to reflect on what had just happened. Humanity had fought against an overwhelming force and emerged victorious. The victory was more than just the survival of Earth. It was a statement, a declaration that humans were no longer going to be passive players in the galaxy. They had strength, resolve, and the power to defend their world. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Zorak sat in the darkened remains of his flagship. The once proud Zorathian leader was now nothing more than a shadow of his former self, surrounded by the ruins of his empire. His fingers traced the cold surface of his command chair, a symbol of his fallen power. He had underestimated humanity, thought they would fall easily before his might. He had been wrong. And now, in the silence of his broken ship, he could feel the weight of his failure. Zorak, a voice echoed through the empty halls of the flagship. It was one of his officers, still aboard the crippled ship. We've lost. The humans have crushed us. They've proven that Earth is not a world to be trifled with. The Galactic Council will surely take notice of this. Zorak didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stared out into the void of space, watching the drifting remains of his fleet. His thoughts were clouded with rage, but also with something else, something darker. A realization. The humans had done more than defeat him. They had made an example of him. They had shown the galaxy that they were not to be overlooked, not to be dismissed as insignificant. Earth had stood up, and the galaxy had taken notice. This is not the end, Zorak said quietly, his voice heavy with the burden of defeat. It's only the beginning. The humans have won this battle, but they have made an enemy of the wrong people. We will return, and next time, we will not underestimate them. Across the galaxy, Ren's words echoed once more, broadcast through the stars for all to hear. Humanity had made it clear. Earth was not a world to be conquered. It was a world to be respected, a world that would not go down without a fight. And as the transmission reached the farthest corners of space, the message was undeniable. Earth had survived the Zorathians, and soon the entire galaxy would know that humanity had proven, once and for all, that they were a force to be reckoned with. The victory was theirs, but the real fight, that had only just begun. In the aftermath of their victory, humanity stood on the edge of a new era. The Zorathian fleet was gone, and the message to the galaxy had been sent loud and clear. Earth had proven itself, not just as a world that could survive, but as a world that would not bow to any invader. General Ren walked through the bustling command center, the weight of the victory settling on her shoulders. It was a victory, yes, but it felt like a prelude to something larger. The galaxy was watching, and she knew that the battle with the Zorathians might be over. But the war for humanity's place in the stars had just begun. The transmission to the Galactic Council had spread like wildfire, reaching all corners of the galaxy. Earth had declared its presence, and now it was up to the rest of the galaxy to decide how they would respond. Ren knew that the Zorathians were not the only ones who had been watching. Other empires, other species, would have seen the humans' resolve and determination. Some might be content to leave Earth alone, respecting its strength, but others might see it as a challenge. She took a seat in front of the holoscreen, watching the messages pour in from various corners of the galaxy. Some were congratulatory, others filled with disbelief, and a few even bordered on threatening. The Zorathians had been humbled, but they were far from the only power in the galaxy. Ren had prepared herself for this, Knowing that humanity's actions would change the way the galaxy viewed Earth, she didn't expect them to be forgotten. A transmission from the Galactic Council flickered onto the screen. The Council was composed of representatives from dozens of species across the galaxy, each one with their own agenda, their own view of the universe. The humans had never been part of it, until now. General Wren, a stern voice came from the transmission. The image of the counselor appeared, a tall, blue-skinned figure with multiple eyes, his expression unreadable. "We have received your message. Earth has made its position known. But let us be clear. We are not accustomed to threats from planets like yours." Wren stood tall, meeting the gaze of the counselor on the screen. "I'm not making threats, counselor. I'm making a statement. Earth has been pushed to the edge, and we've shown that we will fight back. We will protect our home. The Zorathians learned that lesson the hard way. Let this be a lesson to all who think they can take what is ours." The counselor's eyes narrowed slightly, but he did not break contact. "You have shown strength, General Wren. But be cautious. The galaxy is not always a place where such actions go without consequences. The Zorathians are only one force. You are one of many who seek dominance. What makes you think Earth can survive against the powers that truly control the stars?" Wren's gaze was unwavering. "Because we're not like the others. We don't seek dominance. We seek peace. But we'll fight for it. We'll fight for our right to live on our terms. If the galaxy cannot accept that, then we'll be ready." The transmission ended abruptly, and the command center fell into a tense silence. Wren didn't move, her eyes still locked on the empty screen. She knew that the Council's words were not empty threats. There would be others who would test Earth, others who might see the humans' victory as an opening, an invitation to try and bend Earth to their will. But Wren wasn't afraid. Earth had fought, and Earth had won. And if anyone came to challenge them again, they would face the same fate as the Zorathians. Back in the shattered remains of the Zorathian fleet, Zorak sat in his ruined command chair, staring at the silent communication terminals. The last remnants of his empire were scattered across space, their ships destroyed, their forces decimated. But Zorak wasn't finished. The humans had struck back, yes, but that only made them a target. The galaxy was full of powerful forces, and Earth's defiance wouldn't be forgotten. "Gather the survivors," Zorak muttered, his voice hoarse. "Prepare to report back to the Council. The humans have made their move. We will show them what happens when they anger the wrong powers." He turned away from the wreckage, his mind already plotting the next phase. Earth had made its statement, but Zorak would make his own. And this time, he would make sure humanity understood just how dangerous the galaxy could be. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Wren stared at the stars, her mind racing. They had fought off the Zorathians, but she knew that Earth had no illusion about the dangers that lay ahead. The galaxy was vast, and many civilizations would want to test the humans to see if their victory had been a fluke or a true declaration of strength. But Earth had one thing the others didn't: resolve. Humanity had faced countless challenges on its own planet, and now they were ready to face the galaxy. The next challenge would come. She knew it, but Earth would be ready. The Deathworlders had stopped smiling once, and if anyone dared to come again, they would see that humanity had no intention of losing their place in the stars. Earth's defiance was a fire that would burn brightly for all to see. As Wren walked out of the command center, the fleet behind her began its preparations. The battle was over. The war, however, had only just begun, and humanity was ready. Ready to defend their home, ready to show the galaxy that they were no longer to be underestimated. Earth had proven its strength, and now the stars would remember.